The Simpsons might just be the most successful cartoon of all time. A huge running cast of recognizable characters, countless knockoffs, and a crown which reads the longest running American primetime scripted television series. It doesn't roll off the tongue, but it's still impressive. Cartoons were using violence as humor long before The Simpsons, something perfectly parodied within the show. But the yellow-cheeked citizens of Springfield blazed the trail of twisted comedy and a more family-oriented sitcom. Sure, it's got a lot of heart, but it's the dark vein at the show's core, which always scratches that sinister, satirical, and sometimes spooky itch. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and these are the top 10 darkest episodes of The Simpsons.
They got the stink lines and everything.
Number 10. Hello Gutter, Hello Fader. What's an episode where Homer bowls a perfect game and becomes an overnight celebrity doing on this list? Well, when Homer's spotlight quickly fades, he crashes out. Hard.
Bowling alley balloon, you're my only friend.
Homer decides that he's peaked, and pretty much his first instinct is to jump off of a tall building. More on Homer's suicidal tendencies later. Like so many one-minute wonders before him, Homer gets chewed up and spit out of the entertainment industry. It's ironic that the source of our enjoyment creates so much misery for those involved, but it's a rough business, and for a while, it got a bit dark for Homer.
Mr. S, I didn't know you bungeed.
I wanna live!
Number 9. Mother Simpson. The Simpsons loves a good fake-out and gives us one of the all-time best when Homer stages his own death to get out of a highway cleanup, kicking off the episode.
Those helpful beavers are swimming out to save him.
Slapstick turns to a real family drama when Homer's estranged, assumed-to-be-dead mother shows up at his grave.
You awful, awful man! Get out of my son's grave!
The show explains away Mona Simpson's years of negligence with an elaborate backstory and a post office gag, but that doesn't change the profound effect that her absence has had on Homer's life. Or the fact that his father chose to pretend she was dead rather than tell Homer the truth. Talk about dysfunctional. We really see Homer wrestle with deep feelings of abandonment and neglect in this episode. All really common reasons for a life of low motivation and alcoholism, showcasing a dark origin for one of the show's recurring gags.
I thought I dreamed that kiss.
Although there are definitely heartwarming moments, Mother Simpson is one of the few episodes to end on a genuinely somber note.
You'll always be a part of me.
Poor Homer. Number 8. Alone Again, Natura Diddley. Between seasons 10 and 11, actress Maggie Roswell, the original voice of Maude Flanders, quit over a pay dispute with the Fox Broadcasting Company. Show producers took the opportunity to axe Ned's wife in about the least dignified way possible. Reverend Lovejoy rubs some salt in the wound when he almost breaks the fourth wall during his eulogy, summing up Maude as a supporting player in the lives of Springfield's residents.
She didn't grab our attention with memorable catchphrases or comical accents.
It's a dark move in a dark episode that reaches its peak when Homer's religious neighbor practically renounces his faith. Granted, the heresy doesn't last long. God will probably let you off the hook this time, Ned. This one gets bonus dark points for putting a bird sanctuary in the middle of a speedway.
They just surrounded it with something wonderful.
Then it loses them for the feel-good ending. But then again, we should probably add some points for the t-shirt gun fatality. Number 7. The Secret War of Lisa Simpson. Lisa has an interesting role in the show's darker side. She's ostensibly good, hardworking, and basically the voice of order and reason to Bart's chaos. But at the end of the day, she's still just an 8-year-old girl. While it's admirable that Lisa volunteers for military school, her stubborn pride forces her to endure the reality of a semester of loneliness and torment at the hands of the other cadets. Kids can be seriously cruel, and if you didn't know that, you've probably blocked out large chapters of your childhood. Best of luck in therapy. But Lisa's the only one who actually suffers for her pride, this time at least. And the Simpson siblings do come together in a touching display of solidarity. Still, Lisa practically crying herself to sleep listening to a tape of her mom singing, it's pretty dark if you ask me.
You make me happy when skies are gray.
Number 6. Marge Be Not Proud. The show tends to be at its most sinister when it shows storylines from the kids' perspectives. As a kid, everything hurts more, time passes more slowly, and you're more vulnerable in a world that barely respects you yet. When Marge finds out Bart's been shoplifting, she's devastated but also struck with the realization of innocence lost.
Just take it! Take it, take it, take it, take it, take it!
Her subsequent coldness in reaction to her son is all delivered to us through Bart's eyes, so we feel every pang of disappointment that much harder. It's an uncomfortable viewing.
Good night.
Lawrence Tierney's infamous but brilliant guest performance as try and save security guard Don Brodka helps darken the mood as well.
If I wanted smoke blowing up my ass, I'd be at home with a pack of cigarettes and a short length of hose.
Despite the tearjerker ending, this episode managed to convince us just for a second that truly unconditional love might not really exist, and you might want to call your mom just to make sure it does. Number 5. Cape Fear. I don't know if it's the big feet, the British accent, or the fact that he's obsessed with killing a 10-year-old boy, but Sideshow Bob gives me the creeps. Actually, scratch that. It's definitely the last one, but the British accent doesn't help. This episode features a fully grown, convicted male making veiled and unveiled threats to a child, including letters written in blood. Proving he's a man of his word, Sideshow Bob ultimately makes an earnest attempt to brutally murder his target. What makes this episode so twisted is just the sheer fixation that Krusty's former sidekick has with killing his nemesis. The tattoos, the training montages, and the extreme lengths he goes to, following the Simpsons on their admittedly lackluster attempt to join the witness protection program. Nice shirt, Homer. It also just so happens to be one of the most memorable and funniest episodes in Simpsons history. Number 4. Bart sells his soul. There's nothing strange about believing in souls. Hell, according to statistics, there's nothing strange about believing in ghosts, with up to 40% of Americans accepting the existence of ectoplasmic enigmas. It's hopefully less likely that you believe a soul can actually be sold on a slip of paper, although it remains a pervasive trope in TV cartoons. Kids will believe pretty much anything you tell them. Whether or not Bart truly loses his soul in this episode is left unclear by the show's writers, but it's enough to make Bart panic. It's definitely one of the more existential episodes, and no doubt it had us all asking questions when we watched it as kids. What makes us who we are, and could that really be taken away?
You don't have a soul. I don't have a soul. There's no such thing as a soul.
Bart's the perfect character to lose his soul because the contrast is so strong between his normal, troublemaking, carefree self and his hollow, lifeless state. Top it off with some frankly messed up dreams, and you've got yourself a nice dark slice of existential crisis. Yeah, thanks for shaking us to our cores.
$50. What?
Number 3. Homer's Odyssey. The older Simpsons episodes are a lot rougher around the edges. The timing is different, the animation is jerky, and the voices are scratchy. While they may hold some of the greatest Simpsons moments, it's doubtless that their overall vibe is just a little darker to begin with. While the show's writers blew one of the best options for an episode name after just 3 weeks on a plot that's barely related, they did succeed in creating one of the most poignant and darkest Simpsons tales to date. In this episode, Homer suffers humiliation in front of his son's classmates, loses his job, and decides to kill himself.
Wow, live and learn.
Almost getting his family killed in the process. When he eventually achieves success in his public safety campaign, he ends up selling out the cause to go back and work for the evil Mr. Burns. The corporate submission and suicidal themes really remind us that The Simpsons started out as a pretty radically different satirical cartoon with darkness in its DNA. Number 2. My Sister, My Sitter. We've talked a lot about the darker side of Lisa's pride already. In My Sister, My Sitter, we see what happens when Lisa faces the threat of failure and just how dangerous her pride can be to others. During childhood, sibling relationships pretty much just follow the law of the jungle. We're talking about 10 to 15 years of anarchy. The only vague, objective hierarchy is age. You're older, you're the boss.
Oh, I'm a baby, huh? Well, then I'll act like a baby. Gaga, goo goo.
When Lisa demonstrates her responsibility, Homer and Marge upset the natural order by putting her in charge for the evening to devastating effect. Bart effectively turns into the kid from The Omen, and Lisa almost suffers a nervous breakdown, terrified of ruining her newly acquired reputation as a babysitter.
I am so disappointed.
It all culminates in Lisa wheeling an injured, unconscious Bart and a caged Maggie through the bad part of town late at night before tumbling into a river. Everything about this episode is disturbing. It has a serious message about the harmfulness of pride, for which Lisa's goody two-shoe persona is the perfect vehicle. Kids constantly suffer the cruel irony of feeling a need to prove themselves in a world that doesn't respect them. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're a kid, you're just a kid, but that reality still bites. The Simpsons perfectly captures the power struggles of childhood time and time again. This dark episode might just be the pinnacle of that achievement. Number 1. Homer's enemy.
I don't need safety gloves because I'm Homer Simpson.
Yeah, you probably guessed it already. Frank Grimes is one of the show's most memorable characters, to the point where he's almost transcended and become a term in common language. Refer to someone as a Frank Grimes or the Frank Grimes of X, and chances are they'll know exactly what you're talking about. In a sense, Frank Grimes represents our biggest, most secret fear of all, the fear of being unlucky. We all get in a car, cross the street, or ride on a plane and rationalize that for the most part it's a pretty safe thing to do. But deep down, in the back of our minds, we know there's always a possibility of something happening completely out of our control to end our fragile existence. The episode starts by setting up Frank Grimes as the guy who never gets a break.
Went into outer space. You.
Sure. Would you like to see my Grammy Award?
It's a dark beginning, and then it just gets weird. Throughout the episode, Frank becomes increasingly frustrated at the injustice of Homer's comparative success and happiness. Before long, he goes completely insane and, well, immediately succumbs to the doom he's been narrowly avoiding his whole life. Is it a sad episode? Not by a mile. In fact, it's one of the funniest in the show's run. That contrast is exactly what makes this our darkest episode.
Oh, God.
Although we all like to believe that we live in a meritocracy, rewarded for our efforts, isn't it really just a cruel mix of nepotism and blind luck? Is the truth that all of our hard work and effort is essentially meaningless? Is Frank Grimes the show's way of shining a light on the miserable reality of our own existence?
I'm peeing on the seat. Give me a raise.
Anyway, things were getting a little too dark. What episode of The Simpsons do you think is the darkest? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to give us a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notifications whenever we upload. But most importantly, stay wicked.